So my name's Timothea Stewart, and I'll start in 1976. I met someone who turned out to be an MSIA, and I'll preface this by saying my parents had been atheists. I was brought up as an atheist, and I was always curious about different things, but I wasn't into consciously spiritual things per se. But I had just come from living in France a couple of years, and not more than that. I'd been back from France a couple of years, and the last couple of years in France, there had been all these coincidences going on. So I met this person that was in MSIA who told me about it, that was intriguing. And they moved into Prana, and I visited Prana. I thought it was some weird thing they did. But with things that went on in my life, I finally went to a seminar. It was just after my mother died. And I went to a seminar at Lee Taylor Young's house. And that was my introduction kind of to JR. But I thought it was all too touchy-feely, huggy. And then Valentine's Day of 1977 came, and I was invited by that same friend, Rick Edelstein, to a Valentine's Day seminar, live seminar with JR, that changed my life. I went there, and I remember sitting with another person that was invited, and as I'm watching the people in the room, I remember thinking, I don't know what they know. Their eyes were closed, they were doing SEs, but they know something I want to know about. They know something I don't know that I want to know. And that was my conscious thought. At the end of the seminar, JR in the blue chair and all of that, was sitting kind of towards the front. JR came up and introduced himself to my friend and I, and told us that he was glad to see us. And my friend, who had been involved with spiritual stuff, said, I'm going to sign up for discourses. I didn't know what discourses were. Long story short, it could have been ages till I signed up to discourses, but I signed up for discourses that night and bought some tapes shortly after that. And it's been 40 years, and I'm still buying every tape. All my closets, cupboards were filled with JR tapes because they are and continue to be so alive and mesmerizing. I would go in there and buy 4 or 5 tapes every few days, gobbling them up. And I mention all this because, JR, from that moment, it changed my life. So a few months later, I'm going to London actually, to visit a friend, and JR's on the plane going to London. And then a few months later, I had an art gallery that was opening, and JR came there with the staff. So from the gallery, he really hung out there. It was very special. It came May. I'm going into detail because this sets up what else I want to say. In May, at the end of May, the retreat started at Arrowhead. And I went to the first retreat, and then I ended up going every weekend, 13 weekends in a row that summer until August or whenever they ended. And what happened at those retreats, both inner experiences and interactions with JR, telling me about my life plan. I guess from what other people say, it's kind of was like a mini life study. But the call to be with him. To be with him, but it was a kind of very much of an inner thing. And but I asked, after having an experience where, I won't go into it, but we merged, and I told JR about the experience, and shortly after that I asked if I could travel with him and the guys. And he said yes, and I started traveling, and that was in September of the year I got involved, 1977. So I started going on trips to where JR went, and in those days it was very different. It was very silent. There were 3 or 4 guys on staff. We traveled in car, and I would go there on my own. But I ended up getting invited to go along on different things. And I remember it was silent. The radio wasn't on a lot of the time. It was the days of what I see as a certain kind of light work that JR was doing. And it was very special. And one thing that stands out was I was reading on one of those trips, The Path of the Masters, and I had really responded to the great master and his photo. I knew him. And so I was reading the book, and I would be in my room out of the body, and then I would see JR and the guys some of the time, but I didn't really care. I felt like it was, I felt like something was going on having to do with all of that. I don't even have words for it. It was just a very special inner time where I felt like I was traveling with a master and I was reading about a master, and somehow I was just getting very high on the energy of all that. So that's one thing that stands out. And JR, some other, I mean, I have so much I could say, but a lot of those trips we would go to places where there'd been battle, like to Gettysburg or Valley Forge or where the Boston Tea Party was. And JR was often just silent, but I remember one day on the corner in Boston, he talked about the battle that was still going on and the people that didn't know they were dead and the souls, and that they needed to be released because they were still fighting on that corner. So there were bits of pieces of that for a lot of years. And some of the years, particularly after Insight, and then I was doing balances and stuff, so that travel, we'd travel 3 to even up to 6 months. And it was just an extraordinary time with the master, with JR. And so, let's see, Insight started, took the first training, saw that all develop, assisted at a lot of those, ended up getting a call from one of the guys asking if I wanted to co-facilitate with Candace service training. I proceeded in a half an hour to break my leg. I was very next door to prana. I had mixed feelings about doing that. But JR gave opportunities to grow and learn And that was one of them. And another time they called and asked if I'd transcribe Insight 1 and do the manual, not to transcribe Insight 1, do the manual for assistance for Insight 1, which turned out to be quite large. And then I did the same thing for Insight 2 and was asked to do that and transcribe the tapes and did the first manual. And it was being pushed to learn, to grow, to extend. And I was thinking before I came here today to talk about this, and I thought of the ways he's helped all of us grow and given opportunities, and yet been also, you don't want to, it's a very free thing, but very amazing because he works with everybody differently. And you can think one way's right, and he works with somebody else totally differently. It's quite incredible to have witnessed. So there was the beginning of Insight, and then assisting. I'd often be team captain or assist and have an opportunity in those early trainings where JR was working with the trainings and his initiates in the Insight 2 in a very deep way. And there was the removing of a lot of things that didn't need to be there. And I'd be holding people's head, and JR would be doing whatever he was doing. And figuratively, my jaw would be open, like, I don't believe I'm witnessing what's going on. Again, there weren't words, there was just seeing time after time this loving devotion to his initiates, and it was awesome. It was just awesome. You know, a lot of particular experiences, I won't go into that. And then the pack trips and the travel that was more public and people coming along, big groups of people. So I went on the first pack trip, I went on all of them. I traveled till towards the end on most of the trips. And there was never any question about doing it. It was like that was my call, and it was easy. And it was that feeling of that a lot of us have. It's just where we're supposed to be. There's no question about it. And a lot of years went on to see where JR traveled, to do the work filled with a lot of spirit, humor, ordinariness, all of that. And I remember in the very beginning it was like a trip. All my life I would have avoided a trip that has 100 people on it being corralled around to places on a big bus. That's not the way I had traveled or was calling. But it was wonderful. From the very beginning, it was something else. It was purposeful. It was fun. It was transformative. And there were all those years. I think the PAT started in 1984, went on to the last. Well, there were PAT trips after the kind of PAT training as we knew it stopped. But there was the year of the last PATs of a certain nature when there were 2 of them. And the first one, there was the illness, which Zeus, you know about. On the Greek part of the end of the PAT, at the end, in between the 2 PATs, people got very ill. And and I think we were coming from Yugoslavia. I mean, now I used to remember everything so precisely, but now things merge together. So on that trip, it was like the plague. People were sick on this boat and falling like flies, and the few of the ones of us that weren't ill, you felt like Florence Nightingale. You were going from room to room, just making sure people were okay or how they were until we docked. And I remember thinking, Jesus, I didn't know if you were going to make it when I saw you the night before we landed. You were white as a sheet. And JR was pretty sick, but still more coherent, and definitely coherent. And we stopped in Athens and magically got into hospitals. Hospital opened, and then a few days later, there were a few of us that worked on getting this other hospital open, and everybody was in the same place. And the event that stands out so amazingly is people were on IVs, and this was the salmonella, was determined that it was salmonella. And JR, I had asked, I was supposed to go on to the other Pat, and I asked John if I could stay. I just said I just needed to stay with you guys. And I really allowed that. And so I was in the room with you guys. And I remember one day I started to feel ill. And JR is he's on IVs, he's ill, and he takes my hand and he holds it. And he was taking from me whatever was starting to bother me. And that's JR. I mean, he was not thrown by the whole thing. He was handling things in a most amazing way and extending the loving and the caring. Get emotional. In the midst of his own body stuff and all. It was noble. And something else flashed of a similar nature in my mind. Doing the Pats up at Arrowhead, I was facilitating with somebody else up there, and I turned my foot and turned my ankle second time. I was getting my lessons of understanding through foot injuries. And JR said I wanted to go on facilitating, and I was told no. And he said, wait, and he came up there. And with another staff member, he helped. I went back to where I was staying, which was a little motel in town, the two facilitators were. And he helped me pack my bag and take me down the hill. And I know whatever negativity, I surmise, I don't know, whatever negativity was on me or whatever it needed to leave the training. But his body came up there and helped me personally and took me to my home and made sure I got in. And that's the JR I knew and know. So going back to I'm going back and forward in time to the PAT trainings. And just other trips. You make me laugh, Suze. I love it. And I love you made JR laugh. Well, let's see. One thing that came to mind way back was the first Insight 3, which was on neutrality and all of that. And it was in back east, Connecticut, I think, it doesn't matter. And I remember being in the dorm, and I was having this dream with JR, and I didn't want to wake from it, but it was time to go to something. So I go downstairs, and JR's standing there just at the point I left off in my dream. Like I went, now am I dreaming, or is this, I mean, he's standing there as if the dream's continuing with him there. I mean, it was uncanny. And that reminds me of another time when we were in Japan. And a couple of things with a Japan trip. It was a Japan trip where we went to, I was coming from Australia to Japan, Tokyo, and then Malaysia, excuse me, I've got an itch. Malaysia and onward, Singapore, Hong Kong. And it was, I think there was very few of us there, guys and JR. And in Tokyo, we were in a electronic place. And there are just 2 aisles. And JR's there. I turn, and he's not there. I go the aisles, I go around, it wasn't complicated. He's not there, and then suddenly he's there again. I mean, he was not in there for a while, and then he was there. And there are no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's, you know, and that's the, I don't know, call it imp, or the what that would just allow itself to show you, because he didn't want anybody to get caught up in that stuff. Again, that's my thing, my surmising. But I was shaking my head with that for a while. Then there was a night in Tokyo where we went out to dinner, and we had quite a bit of sake. And JR starts talking about the Christ consciousness in a way that I don't think, I know John was there, and Vincent and Paul. No, none of us had heard before, and it wasn't what he was talking about, but it was the experience. He was giving us the experience of something. And the next morning, there was, nobody could say what he said, just that it was so unbelievably amazing, words censored, but the experience stayed. And it was quite a gift. And I think JR worked with me a lot about letting go of both the judgments I had about my father, and yeah, and there's an interest, I'm glad you asked that, there's an interesting story. And I was very preoccupied with knowing that my father and mother, who had passed away very young, were okay. I really wanted them to spiritually be okay. I felt very responsible for them, as if they were my children. And JR told me I had had every possible relationship with both of them, and that's why it was confusing. So I would ask JR, you know, does he have I don't even know if I just, are they okay? And 35 years passed, and one day in an airport in South America, JR's in a wheelchair, so maybe it was the Cartagena trip, I'm not sure. He goes like this. He beckons me to come over, and he whispers in my ear, "Just saw your father." You know, this is an answer to something 35 years before. And he said, "I just saw your father." And I said, "And my mother?" And she's around too. And something could relax inside. And there were quite a few of those kind of, we know each other. And I don't know, it's hard to put in words. Just that inner thing that there's nothing equivalent to. And it's always there. It's always there. My mind can do things or emotions, but the other, I'm so grateful for the years of undeniable experience. And feel like so much got healed and lifted. And it's not like JR takes anything away. He supports that process. But this is what I thought about. He supports us getting stronger and having more inner strength, courage. And it's different for each of us in the ways we need to get there and what we need to do. But I remember when the pain started, and just nerve pain stuff, and waiting for it to be over. What have I done wrong? And JR would always say, just walk through it. You know, just, you don't know what's going on, just walk through it. And I remember asking him in a Super 2, or not a Super 2, but a trip in Israel, whatever that was called. My mind isn't there right now. And he said, yep, I will stop kicking the stool. When I spoke, is there anything I haven't seen or done? Is there anything I could, it's like, have I done everything I can do about this? It's not even whether it goes, the pain, or not. It's that I feel I haven't shirked something. And he said, would you have wished it hadn't happened? And I said, no. He said, are you stronger? I said, yes, and thank you. And it's part of that inner teaching and checkpoints that he'd provide. And I'm remembering I'm just remembering some dinners, just he and I. And it's like those moments when he's talking about something that you know you might not understand, but it's time to listen. It's something's going on that's beyond what's being said. And he was talking a bit about the traveler straddling the dark and the light. I can't tell you, nor would I, what he said. I just, just times it felt very, just like quite a honor to be with the consciousness in certain ways. The givingness to people, the most biggest thing, and I remember during the first Insight 2 that I took, very reticent, quite shy, very, I have it now, kind of, what should I say, what shouldn't I say, that kind of thing. I remember looking at the back of the room, and there's JR, and it's just pure Twaji. He's just, and I knew I couldn't open to take it all in. I wasn't, but I knew what it was, and it was just a marker. I know the amount of loving that is there, and I can't take it all in yet. And he was certainly about loving, and about loving discipline. So it was about loving and growth. And I think as time goes on, it's a sense of how incredible it was to have this experience, and kind of being more awed by it now in retrospect, not making it a crystallized whatever, but that it was such an opportunity and that it remains so alive. You know, I go, JR, Spirit, how do you do that? I listen to tapes, I read discourses. They're as thrilling and alive and today as 40 years ago. So I'm very grateful that just JR, and I feel your presence here. Just thank you with all my heart. And what a ride, glorious ride. And just sending you all the loving and light that you've opened up in me. God bless you.